We've got Craig here in the studio with me. Hi, Craig. Okay, there you go.
Do I answer? Yeah. Je regrette, je n'ai pas le temps.
Lo que c'est tu, Craig.
I'm sorry, but I don't have the time, was what I just said in French.
Okay, we're doing something a little bit different today. We are inviting CalTrout Ambassador Craig Ballenger, one of our favorite anglers, somebody I've known for decades, into the studio. Craig, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, Craig, we have known each other, worked together for... Yeah, Craig doesn't remember, so...
No, I remember all. You just got it a little backwards. 22 years.
Yeah, 20 plus years. And much of that journey has been the CalTrout journey that CalTrout's been on. But really, I think the story goes back a little bit before that because we're both proud products of Mount Shasta High School. As you would say, the village of Mount Shasta.
The Bears.
Go Bears. Go Bears. And then went on our separate ways, but found ourselves back. I remember one of the first things, so I had just gotten my graduate degree in fisheries, and now I'm working for CalTrout. Now I'm ready to roll. And one of the first tasks I got assigned to was, hey, we have this piece of property down on the Upper Sac, 40 acres, and you should go down there and see what we got and what's going on. So Craig and I strolled down overgrown dirt logging road and made it down to what is now the site of the Trout Camp and found a nice bench level area above the river, a nice spring, and also a nice man, John Rich, who was in his rope bed, kicking back, listening to a Giants game.
On a transistor radio.
On a transistor radio in the middle of a very pleasant summer afternoon.
Near the spring.
Near the spring.
It drove me crazy because you kind of get used to working in the wilderness of every sound. And there was a sound that would come to us every now and then that we couldn't put our finger on. And you kind of followed it a bit, and then it would disappear, and then you'd get closer to it, and it was this geezer lying on this cot that he'd constructed between trees and made a mat on top of it, and he was sitting there listening to the Giants game. And he ended up being kind of a interesting dimension to our camp at the very outset.
It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that you befriended him, and we got to know him a little bit. And you somehow very diplomatically relocated him to Hobo Flat.
That's how we named it, exactly. He was kind of a prepper, if you would say. He invested his monies in gold and silver. One day when I was working on the roof, he threw a spice jar, and I caught it, and it was so heavy. He goes, well, you know what's in there? I go, well, I felt like it could be split shot for fishing. But he didn't fish. He never fished, even though he lived along the river. I opened it up, and it was stacked with however many cougarons and Canadian maple leaves of gold pieces all stacked in there. And I remember saying, well, how much is this worth? And he says, well, today it's worth between $9,000 and $12,000.
Oh, in one jar?
In one jar, one spice jar.
Well, remember when he was getting relocated, he went around to the base of these trees and would dig up his caches of his stuff.
He inherited that spot from someone else, and one day he goes, let's dig up this one. He goes, I heard about this hobo here that figured out a way to spend his winter in New Zealand, have all this American money in cash sent to him, and that he could figure out a way to bring it back into America. It was supposed to be something like $40,000.
Anybody going to Trout Camp now is going to be looking around.
They always have been.
Buried treasure.
They always
Buried
have been.
treasure,
Everybody
yeah.
that knows this story.
Yeah.
That there's probably money around there.
Amazing. I mean, so all this is sort of like the beginnings of Trout Camp, which really have been a huge part of us sort of growing out this network of CalTrout supporters. It's been an awesome place to develop relationships, memories. It's a fantastic place. There's a group of people out there, fairly sizable, that come back every year that really have a lot of connection with this place. But that's the humble beginnings on how we staggered into that and slowly started to build this thing that is Trout Camp today. So Trout Camp is a private camp that is on the banks of the Upper Sacramento River. We have 4 cabins now. 5 cabins now. And it sleeps around 6 to 8, 10 people.
Ish.
Yeah, max. There's an outdoor kitchen there, and Craig has been there every summer for the last 23 years, really. Craig, thanks for coming in to Trout Camp Studio, and always a blast to talk with you.
Thank you for having me, and I'll see you along the river.
I'm Curtis Knight, host of the Fishwater People podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to get a little more fishy than usual on this episode. We're going to take a tour through a year of fishing in California with our featured guest, George Revel. He's a 3-time national fly casting champion, rod designer, Federation of Fly Fishers Master Certified Fly Casting Instructor, past president of the venerable Golden Gate Angling and Casting Club in San Francisco, CalTrout Board member, and owner of Lost Coast Outfitters, San Francisco's only and best fly shop. And not to mention, he's a good buddy of mine. So I'm really excited about sitting down and talking with George about fishing in this great state of California. We've had a lot of good times together, and I appreciate you being here today. Appreciate your involvement on the CalTrout board. I think that commitment to conservation that you have is pretty extraordinary, the amount of time and resources you put towards that while running a successful business.
You know, selling fly rods doesn't get me out of bed in the morning, but trying to find a way to make the world a better place and improve my clients' lives, that does. And that's really exciting to me. And that's why I really enjoy my job, not just hawking my wares out there. So it keeps it extremely fulfilling for me is being involved with great organizations like CalTrout. And I so much appreciate the opportunity. And I'm excited that you guys are starting a podcast. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited you're one of the early guests here too. Let's start off. California. If you want to go fishing in California, the places you can go, the variability, different types of fishing, diversity of fish that you can catch, hard to match anywhere in the lower 48 at least.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. We have fishing 12 months a year. We have so many different species to fish for. And so it's something I never get bored doing. You know, there's always something to do out there and something to fish for. And that doesn't exist in other places. Sure, you might have great trout fisheries or pike or whatever, but, you know, we have anadromous fish. We've got all sorts of introduced and invasive species and a large variety of California natives as well. So it's really, really awesome.
And seasonality wise, you're getting people walking into your shop every month of the year. So you see the seasonality of where people are going, what people are fishing for. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the really cool parts of my job is anglers like to brag, right? So people come into the shop and if they had good fishing, I'm going to hear about it. I mean, and not only that, I'm a year-round angler, so I'm always off fishing, you know, but I've kind of built this really cool knowledge base over the years of, you know, month by month where one might want to be, because so much of fishing is being at the right place at the right time, right? So, you know, if you don't mind, let's shoot through the months and kind of go through the cool phenomenon in California.
Yeah. So it's January. What are you doing? Some people are skiing, but what are you doing?
As an angler, I mean, you're going to find me steelhead fishing. January in California, it can rain nonstop. It could be, you know, 65 degrees and sunny too. So it depends a little bit on the year, but yeah, you're going to find me on the Smith, the eel, the Klamath, the Trinity, getting my steelhead game on because they're in town.
And in a year like this, wet year, you kind of have to pick your windows.
Yeah. So, you know, it's, you know, we're watching the weather that's coming through, the weather that happened, and we're trying to find those rivers as they're, you know, drying out, things are dropping down into shape. And, you know, other rivers like the Smith, they need water to fish. You know, you can't fish them. The water gets too low and clear. So you're waiting for it to rain up there. But yeah, I mean, we're happily this year, we've had some good precipitation. We're above average. So, you know, we didn't get to fish that much because the storms were kind of perfectly timed out to keep the rivers blown. But, you know, it's nice to have weather to complain about. So it's good. It's good for the fish.
I mean, steelhead are pretty magical species. their whole salmon life history where they're heading out to the ocean, getting big, coming back in, and then often living to do it again, unlike a salmon. But I mean, that experience for you of standing in the Eel River, say, catching a steelhead on a spey rod that has sea lice on it underneath a redwood, some of the largest trees in the world. What's that like?
Man, that's as good as it gets for me. I mean, the color of the water, you're tying into one of those fish that's just so bright and shiny, and you're connected. It's like, I saw a film one time about steelhead fishing. It's like touching lightning. It's you get that hookup, and I only swing for steelhead. So you're out there and you're kind of enjoying your surroundings, and then all of a sudden, fish is on the end of your line. It's like, calamity ensues. The fish is on, it's running. It's just, you're connected to this incredible power, the power of the ocean. And you've worked hard for it. I wouldn't say steelhead are hard to catch. The hard part is putting your fly in front of a steelhead, right? The returns aren't like they used to be. In the 50s, you'd go out and catch a lot of steelhead, but you also kept them all. And we're paying the price of some of that now. But when I do finally catch one, it's so rewarding. I can remember every steelhead I've caught on the swing just because of how rewarding that process is. And then when I do catch one, I mean, my goal is not to hurt this fish. I'm going to fight it hard and quickly. I don't want to exhaust it. I bring it in, and sometimes I notice there's scars on it from being attacked from seals and sea lions. And I kind of take a moment to admire it while it's underwater. I'm not usually bringing it up out of the water. I'm keeping it in the water, natural environment. I don't handle them with gloves or anything like that because I don't want to take any of that protective slime off them. I'm just kind of in awe of it, and I want to release it as quickly as possible and not harm it because they've gone through so much, man. And sometimes I feel bad even fishing for them, but I'm kind of an addicted junkie, so there's nothing I can do about that. All I can do is treat them as best as I can and advocate for abundance. That's been my process.
As resilient as they are, just the underscoring the care that needs to be taken once you do bring one in, especially those coastal steelhead that are coming in, the idea of keeping them underwater, keeping them wet the whole time. So important.
Yeah.
To do is trip them up on their final leg of their journey.
Totally. We want them to get up there and spawn and make a bunch of happy steelhead. And, the other thing is, make sure you take off your gloves. You don't want to wipe that slime off them. You don't want to beach them up on the bank. So, having a net is a really good idea, or willing to land it. I would rather lose the fish than hurt it. You know what I mean? That's what's going through my mind. It's not about, it is about me, but it's not about me. If I killed a fish, I'd be devastated. So I try to take as much care as I can in the process. And I know that all my advocacy and hard work that we do at CalTrout and other places is on the fight for abundance, and want to make sure that we limit our pressure while still interacting with them.
Part of the psychology of this steelhead fishing you're talking about is how rewarding it is when you finally hook up. That means it's not going to happen every time, but that in a lot of ways makes that event that when you do, even that much more extraordinary.
In steelhead fishing, the difference between a great day and a tough day is one fish. That's all it takes. One fish, and you had great fishing. And that's pretty amazing. A lot of people don't say that about trout fishing. Somebody comes in and say, oh, we only caught one. Somebody caught one steelhead fishing. They're like, high fives, I caught one. What I have a hard time seeing is, people out there fishing for steelhead, handling them poorly, taking them out of the water and holding them up over aluminum drift boats. And then also saying, oh man, I wonder where all the fish are. And you're like, it's like, we got, when they're in our care, we have to handle them, really, really well. We don't need more pictures of people holding steelhead in the world. There's enough of those. We need more steelhead.
Well said. And steelhead season for you, so what is it? January, February, March?
I cut it off at the end of February. I kind of need to start preparing for, our striper season here and getting that process going. And, I got to work at some point. I can't just be steelhead fishing all the time.
The shop needs to run.
Exactly.
So it's a little more of a focus on the Bay when you get into the March, April ones. You're starting to focus more on the Bay Area.
Our first push of striper will come into the Bay sometime in March. So that's where my head's at,
Pause for a second and talk about that unique experience of taking a fly rod into San Francisco Bay and seeing what's there.
Absolutely. I mean, the fishing in San Francisco Bay started when I opened my shop. For me, there were people doing it, but it wasn't a big push. You know, my experience was I opened the shop and I was totally broke. I didn't have $100 to fill up my gas tank. Yeah, that's what it cost. And so I just started fishing more locally. I would go out to the bay and I'd just kind of keep my eyes peeled and watch and see what I saw. And you know, I've been fishing for a long time, so I started noticing the signs of fish, right? Egrets and herons lined up on the bank. You know, they're there for the bait fish. Started seeing bait fish kind of running scared and in these shallow water areas in the bay, and started targeting and catching striper out there. And it was something I was doing, you know, before work and after work. You know, and when I'm trying to get a new business started, I didn't have a lot of time for you know, pure recreation. I had to kind of sneak it in here and there because I had to pay rent and, you know, all that stuff. And so it really fit in well with my life. And what I saw it as is one of the few products that I have as a business that will actually make people's lives better. And, you know, living in the Bay Area it's challenging, but it's also amazing all at the same time. So, you know, just being totally surrounded by water and fish, you know, kind of changed the dynamic for me. Is instead of being like, oh, this is kind of a means to an end, it became, I love it here and I'm never leaving. You know, the thought and the concept of every time I cast out my fly and I'm stripping in, like, what am I going to catch, whether it's in the ocean or in the bay, and having that sort of unknown lurking in the back of my head is, man, it's a really exhilarating feeling and something that, you know, scratches that drive to fish for me.
I know the target's often stripers, but like you're saying, you could get whatever.
Yeah, totally. Halibut, sea bass, man, we've got a salmon off Chrissy Field, lingcod. My dream is tying into a big salmon off the beach. And I'll get there at some point, but you know, likely I'm not going to catch anything. You know, there's a lot of days I go out and I don't catch anything, but the pure beauty of the Pacific Ocean is pretty extraordinary. And there's places that I go to and I'm seeing foxes and coyotes and deer and just all this really cool wildlife. And, you know, I'm also staring at San Francisco from where I'm fishing. We're very lucky and very fortunate that it still exists and it's there and it's accessible. And man, I don't know what I'd do without it.
Yeah, and you've opened the door for that for so many people that wouldn't. They say, hey, I want to try fly fishing and I need to go to the Shasta area or the Yuba or something like that. But you really opened the door for a lot of people, made it accessible.
It's one of the few things I can bring to my clients that makes their lives genuinely better. And, you know, we have a lot of young professionals. They're grinding, man, and they're trying to make it. So giving them something that they can do and experience that in the nature and keep their head on straight is really cool. And you got new parents who, you know, have little kids at home. It gets harder and harder to sneak away. And, you know, all the way down to the retired guys just like, I'm sick of driving so much, my back hurts, you know? So, and it's really appealing to people and you get to do it often and a lot and you can have success doing it. And yeah, it's been cool to watch it grow and build a community around it.
You're listening to the Fishwater People podcast by California Trout, a nonprofit organization founded by a group of passionate anglers over 50 years ago. Since then, we've sustained their passion for resilient wild fish, but we've also grown into so much more. Today, our work is about water, climate change, equity, community. And that community is a vital part, and we want to hear from you. What makes California's waters special to you? If you want to share a soundbite, record a voice memo, and email it to podcast@caltrout.org. That's podcast@caltrout.org. You might be featured on an episode. When I think of May, McCloud River, there's a green drake hatch there that doesn't last very long, but it's just pure magic.
It's one of the best months to be an angler. Everything's firing, you know, Tahoe, Truckee area, the McCloud, the Upper Sac, Hat Creek, Fall River, Lower Sacramento, Puda Creek, the Delta. I mean, every single bass pond near your house, everywhere is excellent. The world is your oyster in May and June. But yeah, I think that green drake hatch is something I would personally try and hit. And it happens on a few of our California rivers, you know, McCloud being one of them, Tahoe, Truckee area, it happens. The green drakes must just taste amazing because there can be one out and a trout will eat it.
All you need is green.
Yeah, like a size 10 green parachute Adams. It's pretty fun. And then May, that weather's warming up, right? So start to get to ditch your waders and go wet wading. Things are heating up a little bit, and towards the end of May, we get those first 80-degree days. Salmon flies and golden stones start popping off.
That's Craig Ballenger's upper sack fly. He rotates his life around that golden stone hatch.
Yeah, it's the Clark's golden stone or a stimulator. You tie one of those on, nice big fly, easy to see, and throw it behind and around and in front of every rock you see, and you're going to catch fish.
So when you get into the hotter summer months, June can still be great, but you get into July and August, I can think of a couple places where I'd be standing in my shorts on a hot day in a cold river. I got a couple favorites. Where would you go? You're wet wading. Where are you going?
Well, if I'm trout fishing, I'm looking for springs. I'm looking for that cold water coming in that's coming out of the ground. We're very fortunate to have quite a few of those in California. One of them being Fall River, Hat Creek, McLeod, Upper Sac, all have that spring influence coming in.
Speaking of Fall River, it's a beautiful spot with great fishing up here in Northern California. We're going to pull in Craig to tell us a little more about the area.
Today's topic is the difference between a freestone stream and a spring creek. And up here around Mount Shasta, we kind of have streams that reflect both. The Upper Sacramento and the McLeod are typically considered freestone streams, and a river like the Fall is considered a spring creek. Freestone streams are most predominant in California and are the result of spring runoff. The way the term came about is because they tend to be boulder-ridden streams with steeper gradients. A spring creek would be like the Fall River, where the majority of the water comes from aquifers. In this case up here, it's from volcanism, and there are huge amounts of water stored beneath the earth. Another aspect of spring creeks is that they tend to be meandering through meadows at some point. Again, the Fall River is a classic example of that. What does the difference between a spring creek and a freestone stream have to do with fly fishing? Actually, quite a bit. A freestone stream, which results from snowmelt, typically is its largest in the spring and gets quite low by autumn. As a result, freestone streams tend to have colder water in them during the spring runoff, and then the water temperature rises throughout the summer season until the autumn storms reoccur. A spring creek, on the other hand, tends to have cold water in it throughout the year because that water is never subject to how hot the temperature is outside because it's underground in an aquifer. The effect of this on fishing is that trout like colder water, and if water gets too warm, they don't like it at all. Bass, catfish, perch, other species of freshwater fish can tolerate warm water a lot better than a trout. Therefore, spring creeks always seem to have great trout fishing in them.
Thanks, Craig. The man really is a wealth of knowledge, but now back to George and on to the next month of fishing. For a lot of people, it's magic when you start getting into fall.
Yeah, October is the May of the fall months where, October, first part of November, again, it's like, where do you not want to be? The Trinity, the Klamath, the McLeod, Tahoe, Truckee, Eastern Sierra, all the leaves are changing colors. Things are cooling off. We're right back into that, amazing fishing. If you take anything away from this podcast, it should be 1, CalTrout's awesome. 2, I want to go fishing in May and October.
Oh, and 3, stop by Las Coast Outfitters before you do.
Oh, well, sure. Yeah. And take your gloves off if you handle a steel and keep it in the water. Oh, we've got a lot of things now.
It's the top 10 things. Yeah. Yeah, I know October is crazy. I think it's my favorite month. And even later in October and early November, hard to beat the colors. I know up in Shasta country, it's the October caddis.
No doubt. Yeah. And that threading the needle on that October caddis hatch, is a little tricky. You want to be towards the end of the hatch a little bit as they start kind of dropping in the water and ovipositing, but you want to be before the leaf hatch when all the leaves fall off the trees. Right. So, there's that little window that we're hunting for where, because all those leaves are going down the river, the dry fly fishing can turn off a little bit because it's overstimulation because the leaves are orange too.
Right.
timing's everything, right place, right time. And, I'm usually watching the weather patterns and winds and stuff like that to see when I can get out there and find that amazing day of dry fly fishing. And it's me, a flask of bourbon, my bamboo rod, and a couple dry flies, and just covering water on the McLeod. I'm a pretty happy camper.
The bamboo rod, that's the throwback. That's a good one.
Yeah. One of my good buddies, Tony Bellever, and he's built some rods for CalTrout over the years for their auction. Extremely generous guy. He gave me a bamboo rod like 8 or 9 years ago for my birthday, and kind of become sort of a, tradition for me to go hit the October caddis with that rod. I mean, you can almost feel the fish like pulse and breathe when you're fighting them on it. It bends so deeply. It's a really cool, unique feeling.
That's about as pure as it gets right there. Do you use catgut leader too, I hope?
Yeah, no, I stay modern on my leaders and lines, but there's a lot of things you could do that I'm just not gonna. You got to draw the line somewhere, tying flies, building rods,
Yep. So when you start to edge in, what do you do in November, December? It's holiday time. People are often busy.
Totally. And for me, November's kind of a slow month in the shop, so it's a big fishing month. And one of my favorite things to do is become chasing kings on the Smith River. I'll usually go up and put a weekend doing that, wait for those November rains and go do that. But, again, the steelhead and salmon are in the rivers and the Trinity and Klamath. And, you can have some really wonderful fishing, and somewhere in November, it's going to get cold. The weather just changes and ice on the roads and things are freezing. So I try to get in my fishing right before that happens. In my world, I can't do about anything in December because I'm in retail, and I've just resigned 24/7 to work in December because the winter months are tough. The January, February, March, April, basically after tax day, things get busy for us again. So we got to have a good holiday season to survive those months. And, people's loved ones come in or are looking for gifts. We can help a lot with that. I like doing that.
The personalized touch is so huge, especially for somebody new to the sport. You can't just go online and order a couple things and then you think you got it. I mean, getting that guidance from the retail brick and mortar shop, it's huge.
Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. I love the relationships.
What else, George? As we wind this thing down, what else do you want to say out there? Lost Coast seems to be back humming again post-pandemic. I've been in there a couple times. Feels like it's alive. Traffic maybe not as it was before, but getting there.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's all stuff I can't really control. And so, I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. We're just trying to figure out how to do the best we can and, adapt to the circumstances that are out there. And, I think the thing that I want to leave with is, if you're an angler and you enjoy fishing California, which you likely do if you're listening to this podcast, keep an eye on the conservation efforts and educate yourself. CalTrout has a tremendous amount of resources to read through and watch and listen to. We got to change the world together and change California together. And it takes people understanding, knowing what's going on. And, let's make these resources what they could be. We have so much potential. I love it here. My clients love it here. And we can make a big difference if we're all working on it together.
That's a good place to leave it.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. And we so much appreciate the hard work you and CalTrout do to improve our fisheries and our wildlife and water sources. We're really lucky to have your organization and you at the helm and all the wonderful people you've put in place there. It's been cool to watch you grow that. I'm really excited for the future of California.
I'm Curtis Knight, Executive Director of CalTrout and your host of the Fishwater People podcast. Thanks so much to George Revel and Craig Ballenger for joining us today, and as always, many thanks to Wilco for our theme music. This episode was produced, edited, and engineered by Drew Alvarez and Bridget Shaw of Pusher Inc., and recorded here on the banks of the Upper Sacramento River in our very own Trout Camp studio. Thanks for listening.